Hey everyone, I had a great Memorial Day weekend. I know I did. I've got to get back on my keto diet after being on that cruise and then deciding that Memorial Day weekend is the time for hamburgers and hot dogs. I'm definitely suffering now, but at any rate, one of the things I wanted to talk to or talk about today is just around the the coined expression from Michael Jordan. And I don't even know if he's the one who originally said it, but everyone buys Nikes. Everyone buys Nikes, right? And so, he said this essentially because he's not trying to cater to any particular audience. He knows that everyone out there, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a libertarian or enter in anything else, LGBTQ, whatever, doesn't matter. The point is he makes products for everyone, or the products that he wants to sell, he wants to expose them to everyone. Um, and so I see this a lot just in advertising. I mean, in New York, it's just very interesting having worked in the ad tech and martech space. This kind of focus around catering to audiences. And I think this spawns from a very online culture. And so what you see online, you think represents reality. And the irony of me saying that is I'm posting this on X and I'll be posting this on YouTube and probably Rumble and some other places, which are all online. Um, but nonetheless, like when you're focused on creating a product, you're looking at what people are saying online. And depending on the audience in which you're following is the feedback that you're going to get, right? Um, and then you can also determine like, oh, this feedback I'm getting isn't necessarily true. Um, it's just a bunch of online bots and trolls just trying to create a scenario in which um, is giving me bad feedback on my product or giving me a lot of negative sentiment. And so I'm just going to ignore that altogether. And I'm also going to call it out publicly, um, ignoring the fact that it may actually not be bots and it may actually not be um, fake at all. It may be actually real and it may be your customers that care about your product trying to give you constructive feedback on how to make your product better or to get back on track. And I see this a lot now. You know, there are companies that create products for specific segments of the market. Um, for instance, my girlfriend is a Thistle and Spire buyer, or at least was. And then, they come out with like a lot of really interesting and intricate bodysuits and other stuff. Well, it was fine when it was marketed towards females, but then they started putting overweight females in their advertising. They also leveraged trans men or just gay men that are now wearing it, which if you're a consumer of that product, you look at the product to see yourself in it. And when you see people that definitely are not you in it, or people that you do not aspire to be, it's kind of a turnoff from the product. And she no longer buys this one Inspire because she gets served these ads with overweight women and gay men wearing the stuff. And she's like, why would I buy this? But this will inspire caters to that audience. And I'm sure when they go into their social media mentions and other stuff, they're looking for feedback from that particular audience. And that's what they want to cater to. And that's fine. That's not my girlfriend. Um, that's not a lot of people. That is not looking at the market and saying everyone buys Nikes. That's looking at the market and going, well, this small segment of people over here buys Nikes and we only want to cater to them. Revenue be damned. And so that's just one part of it. The other is in media and entertainment. And, you know, it's difficult now to find content that isn't political or has some injection of politics in it. The reality is that there is the large majority of people turn on TV shows or go to spend money at movies um, because they want to escape reality. They don't want to be continuously immersed in it. They don't want to, you don't want to be a Democrat, for instance, trying to get away from, like, trying to escape from the fact that Trump won the election, that Trump is your president, only to go out and be hammered with it all the time on TV shows and um, and in movies. And that's regardless of whether it's a positive or negative thing. You can see this in ratings of TV shows. All the late night hosts decided that they wanted to go into, they wanted to, just talk negative about Trump all the time. Well, there is a small audience that does like that. And that's reflected in their actual ratings. The ratings decline was steep and it never recovered. Um, and so, you know it's just become impossible to kind of escape it. And again, people live in their own bubble and they're like, well, there's an audience out there that's praising this kind of content, and so I'm gonna continuously cater to that audience. And again, revenue be damned, or advertisers be damned. And you can see this again, just looking at the facts, um, as to why, if we just look at the movie industry right now, why it's failing so miserably. Me, I am a person that would go to the movies every single weekend to see a new release. Um, when I was in New York, we had one of the few IMAX theaters, and I mentioned this in another podcast, but another episode, but they had one of the real IMAX theaters in the country. So I was able to shoot 70 millimeter film and real IMAX and whatnot, which is a great experience if you have access to it. And personally, I think that all IMAX theaters should be real IMAX theaters. I don't understand why they're not, outside of branding. But at any rate, I would go to the movies and go to specifically IMAX releases every single weekend. And that was up until essentially COVID. Once COVID happened, obviously the releases dropped off. And then the movie experience changed. There was also a heavy shift of like theatrical releases, just direct to streaming. And so you had this on Paramount Plus, and you had this on Apple, and you had it on Netflix, and the list goes on and on and on for all these streaming services, which, by the way, for a segment of people, they like the fact that they can have access to it and not have to go to a theater. But there's a big audience of people that really enjoy the theatrical experience. And I say this as someone who has a movie theater room, um, an expensive surround sound system. I can do all the things. I can, I have all of the experience I can probably get in my house, but I like going out and seeing theaters and being around other people, and getting that collective kind of experience. You can't really get that anymore. And then the releases have just been trash. And there's a couple that I wanted to go over. I figure I'd start with the highlights of there of ones that failed last year. Go through some of the kind of franchises and where they're kind of failing right now. And talk about the movies that are catering, that are like the Nikes or the Michael Jordans of like movies, or movie franchises. Um, but there's really three reasons why movies are failing right now. One is the actors are talking too much about politics and giving their own opinion. Rachel Zegler is a perfect example of this. Not only did she give her political opinion prior to the release of Snow White, she also crapped on the original source material. There's an entire generation, multiple generations of people that have grown up with Disney products and the Disney stories and hold them dear, and to have one of the actresses go out there and crap all over the original source material. Uh, Not good. Not good. Number two, the reason why movies fail is because they're just poorly written. And I think I see this a lot more now because of the sprawl of content. There used to be gatekeepers, and there used to be limited places in which you could release content. Most of it was in theaters. Now you have all of these different streaming services. So what you have is a lot of a lot of just crappy content coming out because it's not getting weeded out, and it's also catering to specific audiences versus trying to appeal to a mass audience. You see this a lot. The other is you have a combination of both of those things. You have actors saying things that they shouldn't be saying while out promoting the movie, and then you have a bad movie that leads to a really crappy release, and then the word of mouth kills the remaining portion or revenue potential for that particular movie. Um, so just kind of like going through some of this, right? I mentioned Snow White, horrible movie, lost a ton of money. The budget reported for this was 270 million. It was way more than that because they had to go and do reshoots because the dwarves were woke, and then they had to go animate all of those dwarves. So they were just the dwarves that were in the original story. That cost a ton of money. It lost a ton of money. I'm not gonna crap on Mickey 17 too much because I actually kind of like the movie. I wish they could have done a little different, making him not making him such a weak character, but it still wasn't that bad. And the arc kind of made sense in the movie. Captain America: Brave New World. The lead up to this movie, like Disney didn't do itself any favors by the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV series that came out leading up to this. Um, they should first, I mean, that show essentially created a lot of negatives leading into this movie because of the overt racial tones within the TV show, making race a part of it. Like, don't need that. We don't need to know that Sam Wilson is having trouble getting a loan because he's black. Like, none of that stuff, first of all, is real. Secondly, like, it's just kind of absurd to put that in the movie. He's Sam Wilson. It's it's just absurd. And then to have it as kind of the running back theme throughout the entire thing, and then having the the villain in the movie be a biracial female who could literally do no wrong, even though she was killing people, didn't help. Then giving Sam Wilson the shield, and then saying he's Captain America versus just saying he's Sam Wilson, Falcon, um, was a huge problem. And so, had the TV show not been so overly racialized, it probably wouldn't have made this movie so bad. But then on top of it, the movie was horrible. The plot made no sense. It was absolute trash. I paid to see it. And it was one of the ones where I was like, I've never walked out of a movie, but I think I might actually walk out of this movie. Thunderbolts wasn't actually that bad. But the plot of the movie kind of killed it. And also the fact that Disney has just been, especially in Marvel, um, actually it's all across Disney, has been pushing forward female leads, and then making the men essentially stupid, and side characters. And so leading into this movie, you had that tone, um, and it just didn't do well. Elio is a good example of putting gay themes in a kids movie, and having parents revolt. Um, there's no need to have gay themes or LGBTQ themes in kids movies. Period. Point blank. End of story. Like it does not make any sense unless you're trying to push that agenda on kids, which is really weird. And I don't know why people think that this is a winning thing to do. Yeah. Um, Alto Knights. This movie didn't do well because Robert De Niro was out talking about politics. Um, sure, it's a great movie. I was gonna go see it until he started just ranting and raving about politics and made me despise him as an actor. And now I have a hard time watching him in anything because I just find him annoying, which is sad because I like Robert De Niro or liked him prior to it, but he's like kind of just lost his mind. I don't. I just wish he would just get back on track and just focus on making things that people enjoy and not being so political. Again, he's alienating an entire segment of the population in the US, which is why that movie bombed. Um, Megan 2.0, I actually kind of like that movie. And it didn't lose a ton of money. Again, there's other ones that are in here, and I think the only reason that actually Unbreakable Boy is on this list, even though it actually made money, is because Zachary Levi is a religious right leaning person, and they just wanted to crap on him. But at any rate, you can kind of see the revenue decline across movies after the final um, where was it? Where was it? um, After Endgame. And so, like after Endgame, they just went in this really kind of woke direction. The only movies that have done well for in the Marvel franchise specifically since Endgame. I mean, again, Endgame was massive, $2.7 billion. Like it was a good movie. I would say that Infinity War or yeah, the lead up to it, which was yeah, it wasn't Endgame. It was Infinity. At any rate, the lead up to Endgame was by far probably the best. But with that said, you had Eternals, you had Shang-Chi, which was just like, who is this character? I know who the character is, but then he's getting beat up by his sister. It's just like, what are we doing here? And then Eternals, again, injecting gay themes or LGBT themes into a movie, tanked. The movie was trash in writing. And then on top of it, you had characters that just didn't need to be, they didn't need to exist in the way that they did. It just made no sense. Spider-Man only one outside of uh, yeah, Spider-Man is the only one outside of Deadpool that's actually done anything. And that's because Spider-Man movies are made by Sony, and then Marvel, Disney gets a portion of it, but Disney doesn't actually produce those movies. Sony does, which is why they do well. And the only reason that Deadpool did well was because Ryan Reynolds was adamant about maintaining control over that movie. But if you look at any of the other movies, Captain America Brave New World opening 88, Thunderbolts 74. Like these movies are trash movies. Fantastic Four dropped off dramatically after opening weekend because of all the negativity that surrounded just people's feedback. We can look at Star Wars as another one. Star Wars is another one where it starts off really well and then just kind of fades into obscurity. Um, Again, you took a movie that had a great cast of characters, You could have just continued on the story with those characters and then brought in other characters. The problem is that you pushed a female lead who was unlikable, even though the actress herself, Daisy Ridley, is a great actress. She's an unlikable character within this franchise. Um, and then you have a bunch of TV shows that are just not helping at all. Season one, Mandalorian, phenomenal. Every other season after that, absolute trash. The rest of the TV series, Obi-Wan, trash. Like, none of those have done anything great for the brand. The only one that I will say is outside of all of that is Rogue One, um, which is probably the best Star Wars movie that's been created. And again, the director and producers of that did not take a lot of influence from Disney in the production of those, as well as the TV show, which was Andor. If you haven't seen it, is phenomenal. Hunger Games, another good example of doing it right with a female lead, and focusing on just creating a movie that brings people together versus having an actress, Rachel Zegler, go out and just crap all over the movie, or not crap all over the movie, but put out a lot of opinions that make people not like her. And then that translates into people not wanting to see the movie. I mean, it is clear as day. Nobody saw that movie because Rachel Zegler sucks as an actress, or just as a person. Indiana Jones, another good example of that. The Dial of Destiny, again, a lot of negativity going into that because, like, we need to hand off Indiana Jones to a female. Nobody wanted that. Nobody liked the way that Indiana Jones was treated by his niece. Um, it made no sense. Like, it was just a poor movie and a way to kill a franchise. The Terminator franchise, was doing really great. And I will say, like, Salvation for me was probably the last good Terminator movie that was made. And I'm saying that after Genesis and Dark Fate, which are which are just absolute trash movies. Again, Genesis, you've got a female lead as opposed to John Connor. Like, it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, it made no sense. The story was kind of trash, and then Dark Fate was doubling down on another female lead. Um, Again, the people want it's a male driven franchise. I'll just put it like that. It's a male driven franchise, and to put female leads in these roles instead of supporting roles does a lot of disservice to the original movie. But also, it did not help that the plots for these movies were absolute trash. The writing was trash. Tron, another good example, because you can compare Tron Legacy to Tron Ares, right? I went to the theaters to see Tron Legacy as well, in 3D in IMAX, which was, if any of you still have a 3D TV at home, and you haven't bought that movie in 3D, you've got to do it because it is probably one of the best 3D movies that has ever been made. But Tron Legacy was good. It was still kind of hokey in certain areas, but it was still technically a good movie and was progressing kind of the Tron franchise. And it didn't have a lot of things that just kind of broke the continuity of the movies. Tron Ares, as much as I'm a Trent Reznor fan, which is part of the reason why I went to see it because the soundtrack was going to be good, like, it was an absolute trash movie. Don't get me wrong, there's some good scenes in the movie, which I still watch at home. But the movie as a whole, I can't sit through the entire thing because the plot is absolute trash. Again, you have a female lead, no romantic love interest. Like, it's just, it's absolute garbage. We can look at Christopher Nolan's movies under Syncope, which rolled out under Batman Begins. Um, Again, another guy who has created a ton of really good movies that aren't woke, that are very good, which leaves a lot of people questioning why he decided to wokeify the Odyssey. Um, I tried actually getting the numbers, the box office numbers for the Odyssey, and they have not released them, even though that movie's been out for now 2 weeks. I think the numbers are bad. The numbers are very bad for that movie. You can't take Greek mythology and wokeify it. You can't race swap people. I just spent time in Greece for a few days. It's a very rich culture. Um, I just don't understand why he would do that. And he has such a great track record of making great movies. And even people who dunk on Tenet, the only reason that Tenet didn't do well was because it was released in theaters during COVID. I went to go see it. They had capacity. Number one, it got released in 2,900 theaters versus the standard like close to 4,000. And the theaters were at max capacity, even though they were only at one quarter capacity because of social distancing guidelines that were placed on movies. I went to go see it with my girlfriend. We sat in a sold out theater. We had an entire row of seats to ourselves. It was absolutely ridiculous. But again, I don't understand why he would do that, wokeify a movie now. Another one, which is a great franchise, which I loved, Mel Gibson's Mad Max character, which led me into seeing it in Fury Road again in an IMAX release in 70 millimeter in a real IMAX theater. That movie did so well. So then I will say the Furiosa character, because it was kind of like Furiosa with Mad Max a little bit, because she definitely had, I would say, equal or maybe slightly more screen time um, than Mad Max. But then Furiosa came out, and I still went to see that movie in theaters, and it's actually a good movie. But the problem is that nobody wants to see a movie that is named Mad Max that doesn't have Mad Max in it. Again, Furiosa was a well written movie. The story was phenomenal, but it suffered from the fact that people have fatigue of female leads in movies that were traditionally driven by a male lead. Um, Again, like, just stick to what works. Don't name it a Mad Max movie. They should just named it Furiosa, and just called it a day. But again, it was a good movie, but there's fatigue with female leads. John Wick is actually a really good example of how to do something right and just expand on it. Every John Wick movie has done more revenue. Um, and it's like, like when you go into a John Wick movie, you're like, okay, it's gonna be a lot of guns. There's gonna be a lot of killing. It's gonna be great. Um, but again, just just kind of killing it a bit. So then that leads into Ballerina, right? Like, I saw Ballerina. Ballerina was a good movie, but it suffered from female fatigue. And so while you have the other John Wick movies that were doing more and more and more and more and more revenue, you have Ballerina, which is for a character that nobody had known before. I mean, there were other characters I think that were interesting. Mr. Nobody, um, the Japan Continental leader's daughter, who was the leader was killed in the movie. But these are interesting characters that could have maybe drawn some people. Ballerina, while it was a decent story and had some great scenes, did not cut the proverbial mustard, to say the least. And so I think two franchises I think that exemplify meeting an audience, creating content that's for everybody is Dune. Um, the first Dune movie, people didn't know what to think of it prior to going to see it in theaters because they had seen the 80s Dune movie, which was kind of cheesy. It was still a good movie, but the I would say the constant dialogue through the movie made it very hard to sit down and watch. Now, if you watch the original Dune, um, it's a slog. But the new Dune movies are great, and each Dune movie is doing more and more revenue. But visually, they are stunning. They're made for IMAX. Like it's made for the theatrical experience, and I mean, they're just like visually stunning movies. And then watching kind of the how they're made just kind of adds to it a bit more. But the number one movie, the number one franchise, and ultimately the number one actor who is solely focused on driving butts into seats in theaters is none other than Tom Cruise. Top Gun is probably one of the best movies made that's just kind of hitting on all the buttons for people. I'm not going to say the script is amazing and all this other stuff. Visually, the movie is just, it's so good. The script is kind of loose. It's like, all right, we're going to bring him back and he's going to get demoted to essentially lead the Top Gun team or Top Gun squadron that ultimately he started in and left as punishment, and he's going to be this guy that doesn't really follow the rules well and whatever in a military that is very rules driven. But nonetheless, the movie from start to finish is a masterclass in like how to not only make a movie but also um, do all of the stuff leading up to the movie. So, doing interviews and just showing the stunts got people interested. Tom Cruise and the way he talks about the movie industry and the fans, nobody else really does that. And so when you go now, like when you go see a Tom Cruise movie, it's going to be a relatively good movie. It might not have the best script, but the action in the movie just is compelling, and it's visually stunning, and you're just like, I want to go experience that in the theaters. And Tom Cruise did that with Mission Impossible, and he did it with Top Gun. And I think the most amazing thing that happened during the lead up to both Mission Impossible and Top Gun was that these movies were in production over COVID, um, and or over COVID policy. And so you had these leaks coming out of Tom Cruise like losing his mind on the set of Mission Impossible and yelling at people for not wearing masks and this, that, and the other. And if you listen to the entire thing, yes, he's losing his S. Um, and but the reason why, and he goes into explaining it, is like he wants to bring people back to the movies. He's so passionate about it. He wants to make sure that they're following all of the right policy that they have to work within so that the production doesn't get shut down and everybody loses their job. And all of the fans don't get an amazing movie. And so his entire rant and multiple rants was all about making sure that people didn't get fired in the production crew, and also, getting people back into the theaters after they had been locked in their houses or apartments, tiny apartments like me in New York City, and not able to do the things that we all love to do. So like that passion really shines through both in Tom Cruise and the way that he talks about things. And again, you can think what you want about Tom Cruise, but making bad movies is not really a Tom Cruise thing. And the movies, he's literally one of the few actors right now that is solely focused on the art of actually making a movie and compelling people to want to come see whatever he's in. I mean, this was like big in the 80s, and I mean, like late 70s through the 80s into the 90s, you had like Clint Eastwood, you had Jean-Claude Van Damme, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, you had Sylvester Stallone, you had Steven Seagal, even to a certain extent. Um, you had all of these actors that people went to go see whatever movie they were in because they were just compelled to see whatever that person was doing. Tom Cruise is one that's kind of like gone all the way through. You used to have Robert De Niro. You used to have shoot, I'm gonna blank on some of these names. A lot of the cast that's in the Goodfellas. You had the same thing with. I mean, there was a ton of actors that you went to go see. Like whatever they were in, you were going to go see. Mel Gibson, another one of those, especially in his the peak of like Lethal Weapon and his like action days. Like you were going to see those movies, and then he went into comedies, and then he went into kind of more serious movies, and now he's producing stuff and whatever. But the point is like there aren't many actors that are solely focused on making the audience happy and producing a product that appeals to a wide audience and gets people in and gets people interested. Tom Cruise is one of those few actors who does that. I would say the way that Ryan Reynolds talks about Deadpool, at least to the fans, um, people know that when Deadpool is going to come out, like it's not going to be some like woke garbage, and it's going to be a bad movie. It's going to be good because everybody knows how much Ryan Reynolds cares about this particular character. That also happens to really align with his personality in general. So it's great to see those movies, and that's why it draws a lot of people out. Tom Holland is another person that's out there just making movies. And he's always very kind to the fans, um, and stays away from talking about politics. Again, this is why Spider-Man movies do so well. Um, and assuming the next Spider-Man movie is going to crush it as well because people have put their faith in this particular movie franchise, not Marvel as a whole, but this particular movie franchise because it's relatively delivered. Good content, not so woke. It's really trying to step away from current events, and not trying to make things, you know, not trying to make you feel like you're just another day, as an audience member. And also, again, not crapping on the fans. Um, there's a bunch of other shows that have come out. There's a bunch of other movies that have come out that have, again, back to my original point, bombed because the actor or actress, or actors or actresses that are in the show have made politics front and center prior to the release of that movie. Saying something is the gayest Star Wars, like, what does that even mean? And why would you say that? The focus is on the fandom, the focus is on the movie, not all of this other stuff. Then on the other side, it's just making bad content or releasing something that is clearly not well thought out. Again, there's a ton of movies that are bombing right now because either the actors suck, on the front end, or on the back end, people go see the movie and then they're just like, what is this garbage? And then you have both, which is like, what is this garbage? And why is this actor trashing the fandom? Which again is a massive turnoff. I think if people just get back to focusing on just perfecting the art, um, and not getting caught up in their own kind of politics. Again, I don't care whether or not a producer is a Democrat or a Republican or whatever. I don't care if they're LGBTQ. The Matrix is a good example of that. I mean, like, one of my favorite movies is my favorite trilogies is the Matrix trilogy, put on by two brothers who are trans. I literally do not care. Now, if they're going out and before the Matrix got released and they're talking about all this stuff, I'm like, why would I see this movie? Like, I don't want to. When you watch the movie, none of that's really in there. If anything, it's a red pill movie, for whatever that is worth. But again, like, just create the really good content that drives people in to want to see your movies, or want to see you as an actor and actress. Um, and ultimately, back to the original point, everyone wears Nikes. um, that's it. That's it. Like, just stop all this other VS. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me think if you think I'm totally wrong about some of these movies. I know people are going to have different opinions about what are good movies and what are bad movies, but objectively, if you just look at the numbers, they speak for themselves, which is why I'm showing them on the screen. But at any rate, as always, keep believing that the best for America is still ahead. Peace out.